sometimes having a full solution blocks someone out of being able
Right.
to share
Yeah.
productive feedback, right?
Yeah.
But coming with a little bit more of a warm topic for someone to jump into and say, I see this, I get it because of the context you shared. And I also appreciate, the three options maybe that you've come forward with as potential solutions, as like maybe the ideal solution, but might not be possible, then the midline, and then the if this is all we can do solution.
Yeah.
So yes, we're seeing more of that, being able to come to a conversation and start in the masterminding instead
Right.
of starting at the place of approval.
Hi, I'm Sehaam Cyrene. Welcome to the Leaders Who Coach podcast. I teach you how to coach your team and maybe even your peers and boss. Customers, yeah, that too. You can now go on your own coach leadership growth journey by subscribing to Leaders Who Coach AI Enhanced self-paced course. It's a truly affordable rate now, thanks to AI. And when you're done here, do check it out at leaderswhocoach.ai or coachlead.co. Both will get you there. Today, my guest is Darcy Peters, actually a graduate of Leaders Who Coach. Now, Darcy is a senior customer advocacy manager at Buffer, your social media scheduling tool that you probably know well. She has spent nearly a decade helping businesses and entrepreneurs grow their confidence on social media. So her work spans customer success, of course, onboarding, education, and technical support across SaaS, web, and mobile platforms. She's got a background in leadership coaching, which we like, strategy, planning, project management, and operations. And she brings a practical, people-first approach to her work. So before she was in tech, she served as a captain in the US Marine Corps, and that experience has shaped her leadership style. Welcome, Darcy.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here and to be able to chat again.
Why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit more about who you are?
Great. Yes. So as you mentioned, I'm a senior customer advocacy manager at Buffer. I work across, customer education and onboarding, procurement, manage the help center, documentation, our self-help experience, and proactive support as well. So lots of fun places to go with that. I'm also a wife and a mom of 3 children who are all growing up. The last one just moved out of elementary school, which is
Oh,
just
wow.
quite wild. And we're in summer break now, so we're just juggling a new season as we're also moving fast in the age of AI at work, which I know we'll get into.
Yeah.
I'm also a tennis player. I started when I turned 40,
Wow.
just a tiny bit ago. So it was about 2.5 years ago. And it has turned into something that's really fueled me and just fed my soul and enabled me to be present for all those other areas that I need to be present for. So yeah, that's
Brilliant.
me.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you for that. So I really want to dig into your past experience in the Marines. And obviously that has shaped who you are, your style of leading. What can you share with us about that that's really significant for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I wasn't in the military for that long, but it's such a formative experience at a young age, just doing something like that. And it's quite a jump to go from some military setting into entrepreneurship and then into working for a company like Buffer, which is includes a lot of vulnerability and empathy and kind of roundness and warmth into business. So kind of a huge contrast there. In the military, I'll share a little story for you just to give you a little bit of a picture. When I came out of training and then reported to my first duty station, which was MLG 1, Marine Logistics Group 1. You go in and you go into the office once you're introduced invited in by your superior officer. You stand at attention and you give the greeting of the day. Good morning, sir. And then they talk to you and it's very, very formal. And in that interaction, he told me, you are going across the street. You're going to be deployed in 2 months. So I'm just arriving, my first duty station. Okay, now I'm going over here to be deployed. And he told me I was coming in as a second lieutenant. That's brand new officer. And he told me, you're taking over for a captain, and I don't think you're likely going to be successful in this. And he basically just
Wow.
laid it out. And that's a form of motivation, I
Right.
suppose, right?
Right. Right.
In that moment, you don't say anything. I mean, you just, I, sir, you're just thinking in your head, this is strange, and then you leave and go off and keep it to yourself and maybe share it with your loved ones at home. Like, this was interesting interaction, but it did put a fire under me, and it had me studying every day during that training to make sure I was on top of it as much as possible, because what I was about to do was go into a real life situation across the world that's could be a life or death situation, and I need to know my stuff and figure this out. And that contrasted with coming in to an organization which I had some buffer time, which was my entrepreneurship in the middle. I opened a couple fitness locations, Fitness for
Wow.
Moms, through the Fit for Mom franchise. And that was a wonderful experience as well. But it was a nice little cushion in between. And it started to cushion and bring me back into, that there's always there's humanness in the military, but it's a different level because of the effects that could result in the outcomes of how you're leading, right? When you're in more life or death type of situations, right? So it was something for me to kind of soften myself into and remember that different people work in different ways, and motivation for one is not going to be motivation for another. Um, and
Right.
then contrasting that in the military as well. You're coming in, I mentioned, as a young officer, and you're leading people who have been in the military for sometimes 20 years.
Wow.
And you all of a sudden are their superior officer because they are enlisted, which is a different track. So as an officer, you're automatically the boss of everyone else, no matter
Right.
how long they've been in. And so you learn as a young officer to come in with humility and observation and looking around you and listening and respecting those who have had different experiences and more experiences, and knowing that even though they're calling you ma'am and they have to salute you, that you are the junior in the scenario here. And so being okay with playing a role of leadership, understanding that you might know the organizational aspects, you might know how the pieces should fit together, but you don't know all of the ins and outs of everything that we're doing. And it's really important that we let others who have those strengths lead in those areas and leaving space for that. So that's something that really connects with the Leaders Who Coach methodology and what you're teaching, and something that I learned very early on, but had the opportunity then to transition and start to practice it in my work life. And then going through the course, it really started to cement, oh, there is a connection here. I can use that skill set that I so strongly had to lean on in the military and use it in my day-to-day life here at Buffer.
That's that's wow. There's lots of threads in there. Thank you for sharing that. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there is a philosophy that if you challenge someone almost by saying you're not going to succeed, that for the right character, that does light a fire under people, right? To prove that that's a challenge, right? You've thrown me a challenge there, and yeah, that's a really still a tough place to receive that kind of a message, because it's very direct. There's no uncertainty about what that is intended to do, and you're clear about what you're being measured on, right, in that single sort of short sentence. But how your own personality allowed you to navigate that space and respect the experience of those you were leading just obviously was a natural instinct and a deference to them, right, that was important to you, super important. Yeah. And yes, it's similar in using coaching skills as a leader. You your role is not just a subject matter expert, but you are there to grow others. And so sometimes others are closer to the task and know more about it than we
Mm.
do. And so we have to be aware of that, cognizant of it, notice it, and respond accordingly. Wow. But still, what a brilliant, brilliant experience. And then even your franchise work as well. That's an interesting stepping stone, isn't it? Clearly, the entrepreneurial spirit is strong in you. that's, that's really comes across to me.
Yes, it was, I will say, a nice break to go from very, very strict schedule, very organized and formal,
Yeah.
to complete break to doing my own thing. You know, I can choose, where do I want to open up a location. I know I have this territory, and you know, what would make sense? Where do I want to go, and who do I want to hire, and how do I want my classes to run? Just
Right.
complete freedom, right? And
Right.
that being the kind of pivot then to something that is more structured than that, but far away from where I
Yeah.
started, and where
Oh,
my foundation is. Yeah.
yeah. Amazing. And at Buffer also, there's been quite a lot of change over the past couple of years, and certainly the shift to a 4-day working week and the transparency as well in terms of how stuff gets done. So that's been a lot of change. And also AI has been something that, has been a massive driving force as well. So what's a typical day for you in your role?
I know, it's so funny to think of typical in today's age, right? What is typical? But no, I would say in general, I'm always having connection with teammates and my own team members that I manage through Slack. We do a lot of asynchronous work, or through Zoom synchronously. We're talking constantly in all sorts of tools, but also something that's really important to me and to all of our customer advocacy team would be the connection with our customers. So whether or not I'm directly speaking with a customer or observing interactions over social, an email, or we also have a Discord community. That's an important part of my day because it keeps me grounded to the experience of our customers and what they're
Mhm.
what they're feeling about Buffer and what they're interested in. And along with that, we also have a team of creators initiative at Buffer right now. We call it Team of Creators, and it's the way of putting ourselves in the shoes of our customers.
Right.
Most of
Mhm.
who are creators working in social media. And so when we committed to this is me every day going into social and responding to comments that are made if I'm blessed enough to have received any comments, or thinking about what can I share today that could be interesting to others, or it's really something that has challenged me to think about having to constantly come up with content, and it's just a nice way to empathize with our customers. So that's another big part of my day. Yes, try to
Yeah.
figure out what's next now, and of course, working on focused initiatives that we have in our plans for the quarter. Or right now, we're planning H2. That's, if you're not familiar, it's a semester of time, a half year. It took me
Yeah.
a little bit to learn that one because
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
familiar with the word semester. But so we're in the middle of H2 planning, which is always a big endeavor, thinking through if we need to rethink any of our vision or our priorities as an area, and taking into account the newer Buffer strategic priorities, and how all of that works together, and what do we want to look like in H2, and can we even think as far as December and come up with anything concretely in this changing environment. So those are really fun daily exercises that I'm going through right now in this period of planning.
Right, right. So constantly responsive to what's going on. And it is moving really fast, right? Certainly what people are able to do with the help of AI, I'm sure that presents some interesting trends and patterns and so on. So you mentioned synchronous and asynchronous. So, catch ups with people. I think you mentioned recently also you don't really use email too much these days. So what do those interactions, what are your team and you interacting with your team look like from I guess, a leadership perspective? What is your role in 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 the synchronous and asynchronous catch-ups you do?
Yeah, we have a variety, and that is something that keeps us going. We often will evolve how we are meeting or connecting with one another. One of the blocks that we work from with both asynchronous and synchronous connection is just chatter, being able to connect as humans. And hey, I'm here this morning. How are things? We have a weekly prompt where it'll have an interesting question, but also how are you feeling? Green, yellow, red. And
Yeah.
people can talk about that. So we have that way of connecting with one another, understanding each other as humans. You might see something that then draws you to DM someone and have a further, deeper conversation, whether it's someone who reports to you or is on your same team or not. And so that connection is the foundation of then what we draw on with all of those professional connections. And I think it's something that has been important to our team members as they vocalize that they really do enjoy that time. We also have small group based on time zone meetings once a week where we talk about the state of the inbox, any incidents that might be going on, making sure we're all on the same page as far as our understanding of what's happening for our customers right now, what trends are being, seen. And something that really is pulled out of a lot of those conversations is someone just says, hey, I don't know if this is anything, but I saw 2 emails about this issue and just thought I'd throw it out there. And then, oh, I saw one of those. And then it becomes, okay,
Right.
let's look into this further and become something. So facilitating the opportunities for that casual growth and relationship development
Mhm.
connection leads into that we have the vulnerability that you can have in the professional connection around, hey, this might sound like a silly question, or this might seem odd that I'm mentioning this, but I trust this space. So I'm going to say it anyway. And then it leads to something that is going to be beneficial for our customers.
Right. And I should point out for anyone who doesn't know how Buffer operates, you're completely globally distributed. Everyone is
Yes.
remote. And so having a system for staying in touch with each other in a genuine, human, natural, organic way is something you've been working on for some time, right? And the organization Buffer's been working on to make sure that happens, recognizing the importance of the strength of those connections and having deep trust with one another and being able to surface things in that way. So yeah, does that, I mean, when you, I guess, compare yourself to people not at Buffer or friends and so on, does that feel different to you or to them in terms of the style? And how do you I guess evaluate that for yourself? Like, do you miss the in-person connection, or do you feel like actually the way that we're structured and we operate, I get plenty of contact time with people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally, I really appreciate and value our setup and the way it is. We do have a lot of connection that's required to make sure we're moving forward in all of the
Uh-huh.
initiatives that we're working on. So there's that, but we also have these opportunities to connect as humans. And interesting, and this is might sound foreign to others, but once a year we have a retreat, and as you know, we just went to Barcelona, and it was just the most amazing time. And I think I always go into those periods a little trepidatious, a little, nervous. You're leaving your home. You have so many things here, right, that are swirling and you need to figure out before you leave. Then you're going and you're seeing all these people you haven't seen for a year, or maybe you've never met because they recently came to the company within the last
Right.
year.
Yeah.
There were 15, I think it was 15 new people who were attending their first retreat in Barcelona this year.
Right.
Well, you show up and it's it's like old friends, right? Like even the people you've never met before, there's hugs all around. You feel the warmth. We always say there are no clicks. Anybody can join any conversation and be welcome. We
Right.
want more. We want more interaction and to have those opportunities. We do personal stories where we sit with a group of 3 others and we tell as much as we want about our life. You can go through the the depth, the highlights, anything you would like. And that is the growth opportunity. And then you leave that week, and I always think of it as this big ball of energy, and it's like an energy power up, maybe in like a Pokemon energy card.
Yeah.
And you have it, and it's so much you can't use it all at once. And so it kind of like starts to launch you into the next period, and it lasts and lasts and lasts, and then it starts to peter out, and then you have another retreat. So that is something that is huge in the remote environment. It's
Mhm.
valued, and it's something that spurs us into momentum for that next period. And we go home and we're in our safe environment, and we're able to focus on those things that we planned out. We don't have to pivot and, chat with this person over here every 10 minutes, or
Yeah.
someone's coming up and knocking you on we work asynchronously and allow people to work at at the times that work best for them and where they work best. And I believe that helps with our ability to drive things forward pretty efficiently.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And there's some research around the fact that actually alone time and then together time can actually produce the most creative
Yeah.
approaches or the most high quality work. So yeah, mixing that up in that way, having that sort of deep connection, and then being able to work alone is perhaps something buffer folks get to do more of, right? You actually can have a bit more of that quieter thinking, productive time to actually execute, which most people, when they are, I hear on on big tech projects, is back to back meetings and no time to actually do the work, right? So
That ironic.
it's yeah. And that may be that they're together, but even if many of them are working remotely, they still have that challenge of back to back meetings. So that's interesting. We've talked about how issues get resolved in our last catch up, and the fact that I guess I want to talk a little bit more about how AI maybe is changing how your team is functioning. So the example you gave was maybe, folks would wait till the meeting that week to raise a topic. But actually, and especially I think in customer advocacy, you're trying to resolve customer issues quite quickly. And so you may have team members that actually come up against an issue or a challenge, but are leveraging AI to come up with a solution quite quickly. So they're not waiting for the meetings to raise them. Could you share a little bit more about that? Because I think that's a really interesting shift in productivity and how that affects how you might manage individuals or coach them through the challenge that they have.
Hmm. Yes. Well, I will start back in about October, which we were using AI at that time, but it wasn't as rocket ship as it is now. Back then, we decided, and Joel, our CEO, was initiating some collaboration conversations and thinking of new ways for us to communicate and work with one another. One of the things that came out of that period of exploration was fewer meetings. Let's knock a bunch of recurring meetings off the list and just see how it goes. Maybe we only if we have a blocker, hit a blocker, or if we have a specific topic of conversation we need to go into and we know who needs to be in that conversation, we can schedule a call and let's do that. But we kind of went to the side of let's err on fewer meetings. And that was a fun experiment to try to figure out, okay, what does this look like for us? Are we able to talk as much as we would like to? Are we more productive without some of these? Did we have some wasted time in meetings? And so it was just kind of a way to ease into where we are now, which is AI is a stronghold, and we are really leaning in with consideration for faultiness of a technological system that we're dealing with, and understanding that there are, could be some drawbacks there as well. So having
Mm.
some caution as we walk in, but also seeing that, yes, waiting for a meeting, waiting for that call, or even saying, you know, I have this problem or this question that I would like to solve, and giving it to someone and saying, here's a problem I'd like to solve. Does that feel like a problem to you? Waiting for them, they come back. Yes, it feels like a problem. go on and start to solve it. Then the person goes on and does the research and tries to solve it. Instead of that, it's so quick and easy to just start to brainstorm with AI, and asking it to bring up questions for me, coach me through this. Here's a question that I'm having, or here's a problem I'm seeing. Here's a document that might support some context around this issue. And what are you seeing? And then going back and forth. Okay, here's my thought as far as how to resolve it. What loopholes do you see in that? What gaps do I need to fill before I go to someone with this? And it's not that we have to come up with something that's a full-fledged solution, because I don't think that's necessarily going to be productive. Sometimes having a full solution blocks someone out of being able
Right.
to share
Yeah.
productive feedback, right?
Yeah.
But coming with a little bit more of a warm topic for someone to jump into and say, I see this, I get it because of the context you shared. And I also appreciate, the three options maybe that you've come forward with as potential solutions, as like maybe the ideal solution, but might not be possible, then the midline, and then the if this is all we can do solution.
Yeah.
So yes, we're seeing more of that, being able to come to a conversation and start in the masterminding
Right.
instead of starting at the place of approval.
Right. Interesting, isn't it? Because at the point of masterminding, there's already some exploration that's been done and some assessment as to the pros and cons of the options that are available, right? And so some of that, it means you can jump straight into making a judgment call earlier in resolving something, I guess, because they've self-coached in a way, because they've used AI, they've gone through a thinking sequence. And so they're not coming with as you say, they're not seeking a permission. They're just, here's where I got to, and this is now, open for discussion or a decision as to which way we move forward. So how does that change your conversations then? Because it feels like then you are more in the tactics of resolving that problem, and less because the individual has kind of done the self-help. They've, through the use of AI, they've overcome maybe some potential blockers about, I wouldn't know how to get started, or the fear of not knowing, how do I do this? Or even thinking that your peers or your boss might think that you ought to know, but now you do know because you've had some help to actually explore it. So the confidence levels are up and the knowledge is a little bit deeper. You're still bringing it to the table, right? To have a discussion around the usefulness of whatever that solution option is. It's an interesting shift for you as a leader. So what's the conversation like then that you are now having with people?
And I'll just lead in with, the conversation right now might not be the conversation in months down the road when we know more and have a stronger foundation with our understanding of the capabilities of each AI tool. So one thing that I'll start with is, when you're working with one AI tool, that's great. One time I did an experiment by asking it was a bigger brainstorming kind of strategy development topic. So it was something that was like looking for a lot of brainstorming topics or points, bullet
Yeah.
points. And so I went to 3 different AI systems to see, will they have different ideas? And so sure enough, they did. All of that to say, when a team member comes back with working with an AI tool, it's not necessarily exhaustive. So as someone else on the team, be it a leader, a peer, or anyone else, you might have some other context that raises, "Oh, what about this other thing? Have you explored this?" And so there could be some gaps there that are still available to us. And it's important. I would say this is a challenge of today, but it's important we keep that brain turned on, right? Because I think it's so easy to just think this is a very smart technology, and
Yeah.
surely it's
Yeah.
got everything figured out. But
Yeah.
remembering to keep that on, it takes energy, it takes a lot of intention, but that is an important part of leading people through some of this. The other component would be beyond the results and the context that AI is giving is what else can we do with this system to help us with this solution? And a recent scenario, a recent issue that came up was Kelly, a team member that I work with who manages our help center content, is trying to figure out how can we automate receiving information about new features that are being worked on or feature changes, because that's what's going to need to go into the help center. And those are the things that she's working on. How, working with 4 different PMs, how is she going to get that information in a streamlined way so that she can start proactively working on article changes so that our
Mm.
customers have it right when that feature ships? So that was something that we worked with some engineers and some PMs to think through solutions, but it all comes down to what are the capabilities of the AI system that we're working with. And Buffer has purchased Claude Team for our entire team, connects us in one place. We've added some team-wide connectors like Slack and Linear and Metabase, all of these big tools that we use. And so we have all this to pull from. Now, how can we use it to solve this problem that we're having? And so that was a process that we worked through that was probably more difficult last month than it will be in 3 months when we know more about the capabilities.
Mhm.
But Kelly was able to create an automation with the support of peers and PMs and myself and others around, and Claude itself, who helped us also to be able to look through all of the linear projects and issues that engineers and PMs have put out there, pulled the ones that seem to be feature changes or new features and put those in linear for Kelly's assignment to determine if it's an actual feature that she should be working on to evolve an article. And so that is just one example of, okay, we
Oh,
started
yeah,
with a problem. We could
yeah,
have worked through it manually, but decided to push the technology and learn the foundations and what exists. But we used a lot of resources to do that. And in the
right.
future, we'll already have locked some of this and the problems will look different. And the leadership behind some of these problems will also then have to evolve.
Interesting, isn't it? But Claude is well. These tools are part of the team now in a really dynamic way. Um, I like your point about, we're not deferring the thinking to AI, but we still have to be able to do that critical thinking and discernment and challenge the tools that we're using as well. I think that's certainly my experience of AI and building products is the challenge is just as important as, asking for ideas or thinking through something. So the critical thinking is really important. But the amplification is a massive opportunity because it speeds things up, right? It allows Kelly to be able to focus on the right things sooner for customers. So absolutely massive deployment. But in some conversations I've had recently with CTOs who are, as much as any other function, trying to get their heads around what can they do with AI, where can it take them? That is definitely presenting a cognitive load on leaders being able to direct their teams and focus them on the most optimal, the most strategic thing. But it's kind of hard because everyone has so many threads. And so how do you align on what's priority?
Yeah, I was talking to a team member and just thinking of like the illustration in our minds of an atom and us being the nucleus,
Right.
and the protons are here and the neutrons and the electrons and
Yeah.
everything's swirling around, and we're like, looking around like, oh, there's so much here, and it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And it's also a little chaotic at times, and then can feel muddying because there's this new technology that you want to latch onto and you want to fly along with. And you should do that. You feel like you should do that to be more productive. Excuse me. To be more productive or to be more effective in what you're doing. And you have that motivation. However, there is a lot going on. And as you mentioned, you might have several things within the same AI system that are working all at once. And so the grounding part of this is regardless of what you have working in here, the foundation of what we're doing at any company is what you've laid out. And as far as your priorities, the initiative focuses you have for this period of time, the projects that I personally am assigned to. And so I do find myself being distracted by, oh, this other thing I can build out, or this other thing I need to research.
Right.
But I committed to these things, and I know that I still believe that they're going to move us forward.
Yeah.
And so let's put that aside. Maybe on my fifth day, if working a 4-day work week, we have that fifth day as a flex day. And so we kind of can play around with those things, the other things on that day, or on the weekend, I can look at those. But right now I'm going to focus on what we've agreed on as an area. And until we decide to pivot, which we very well might, because we know things are moving quickly. And so it's very much an option for us to move along and say, you know what, this doesn't really fit what we're doing anymore. That's okay. We'll pivot and maybe we'll choose one of these things. But until then, I'm going to fit these things into the cracks in my day. So perhaps I'm working on an initiative, and as I'm going through there, I'm thinking, you know what, I can pull an assessment for that in a different way than I used to. So instead of downloading a CSV of all of our customer interactions with our chat bot and going through them manually, or sorting them in a certain way and looking at them manually, maybe I can build something within 15 minutes in AI, and it can help me make that assessment, or at least give me a starting point where it organizes things in such a way that I am more efficient as I go through manually and look through those interactions. So we don't completely have to abandon them, and we don't want to lean fully in and abandon what we've agreed upon, but we can have some sort of balance and fit some of this in the cracks while still being really focused on those things that we believe will move us forward and our customers forward.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because they are exciting, those things that you can build, right? And they are distracting. It's almost like it has to be a reward for getting your work, the core things done, and then carving out that time. But I think that is, what I'm hearing there is it's really important so that, the H2 planning, or, whatever the focus is for a quarter, actually becomes really important still. There is still a really strong place for that, because it anchors people and allows for people to focus back on the work that they've committed to doing. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because it feels like just the structure maybe of our day, or the work that we're doing, it may be shifting more into having an element, 10% or whatever, that is highly experimental, that is always about improving how we're doing stuff, and not solely relying on repeat processes to get through what we've committed to doing. So I find that really fascinating. And in doing that, it requires a certain amount of discipline, both of leaders and your team members, to be able to go, yeah, that's really cool. I'm going to come back to that. But I'm committed to delivering this right now and staying focused on that. So I feel like that's an aspect that is creating a different demand perhaps on leaders. Does it require you to nudge people back, especially in this current phase that we are all in? You spoke a little bit about the sense of it can feel a little chaotic at times. Does that mean we got to do a little bit of nudging people back and reminding them what to stay on target with, without squashing the ideas and all of that exciting stuff? I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Do you find yourself having to nudge people back to what they need to be focused on?
I have to nudge myself back.
Oh, we all do, right? Yeah.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, you think that's something that we've discussed this openly, as you can go down that classic rabbit hole because it's fun, it's exciting, and there's this really strong carrot at the end of that where you really want to get there. And so just knowing when is the time up for me to tinker with this thing, and having something built in internally in your organization. We recently, I'm just in awe by some of our team members who have led some of the different types of training and support for this AI implementation. Katerina on our team really brought forth that Claude team plan and helped us to get get the whole team in there and allowing us to have this very, what's the word? Just a common ground to be in. The same place. We all understand the same language. We have the same connectors. We can now add shared skills, share them with each other, Claude skills, that is, and different plugins, things like that. So now we're cross sharing. What I'm building is benefiting others. So we have these systems. We've had trainings from Adam on our team. He sent out different videos to the customer advocacy team. So now we're all understanding some basic tenets of how to use AI to support our customers, to troubleshoot, to get into the technical details and understanding what's happening for them and why did that post fail for them. So all of those things are important. And then we also just launched something called the AI Champions Network. And there are so many people on our team who have varying levels of understanding of different pockets of how to use AI to be beneficial and to move us forward. And this is a group of those individuals who are willing to share some of their time and say, hey, I'm happy to sit down with someone who wants a masterminding partner about an issue or something they're trying to build or something they're trying to solve, and to have Q&A times. So all of these things are going to support that continued growth and allow us to be vulnerable, allow that openness necessary to say, I don't know. I found myself troubleshooting for this customer for like 45 minutes because I thought I could build this thing and it didn't work. And then there was an error and I just didn't know when to stop. And then, you know what? I've done the same thing. And now I came up with a rule of thumb of 15 minutes and then I'll stop and ask the AI Champions Network, or I'll ask in our AI channel in Slack, et cetera. So having those built-in cushions to land on and to be able to have that collaboration and masterminding across the company in a way that's not scary, that doesn't require you to know everything. It's expected that we should be cross-sharing and not know everything, and we feel comfortable with that. That is what is going to help us continue to move forward as a team.
Yeah. I think, okay, so there's a few things in there. One is that the collaborative nature of how you were already operating seems to have just exploded, amplified, right? There's a lot more of it. And it's not just about the tools, but it's about learning how to work, how to do our jobs. And it's interesting that I think one interesting thing about AI is it's opened up more of a dialogue in some spaces, not all, about our relationship with technology. And, there are camps that are, totally terrified of using technology, even though, and I've seen it numerous times, even people working in the tech space can become so removed in because their leadership role doesn't require them to be in the technology so much. And there's a greater fear around actually, what does it mean? How can I use it? But what I love about what I'm hearing is that whole collaborative nature has allowed people to overcome any fear of not knowing, because we're all in the same boat. And I think especially given the work that you're doing and the way Buffer's embraced AI I think, is a really fascinating space. You talk about vulnerability. You talk about the fact that it allows us to say, I don't know, does anyone know? Like, have you tried? Have you done something? And I think that is an important part of the journey that everyone's going through, you and your peers, right? Is that shared experience of learning at such a rapid pace, but also a higher frequency of just not knowing because things are changing so quickly. And so a greater comfort maybe also that comes with that because, of the dynamics, the common understanding that we're all learning here and we're all trying to figure out what the best way is. And yes, we do get carried away and here's how I deal with it. But I love that. To me, it's encouraging a thinking about collaboration that goes way beyond just doing the job, right? Or people coming together, but there's a collaboration happening in learning as well, right? Or in problem solving or being creative to resolve things.
We're in this together is kind of that sentiment of we're in this together to learn. And there are a lot of considerations around security.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
privacy and all of those things. So having it as a company effort is often helpful because you can build those safeguards in, you can build in some sort of policy where we're
Yeah.
all on the same page. And
Yeah.
so having that clarity and just speaking things out loud is
Yeah.
what allows for that comfort to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are many organizations that I don't think are quite there in terms of understanding the security elements and how it actually plays out day to day in our work. But for sure, it's a really important consideration. And our experience with our program of keeping a human in the loop for our learners, even though, assignments are now scored by AI. But it's really important that we stay close to that, and we're constantly monitoring and checking what are learners gaining from this? How is it helping them move forward? How are you, or where do you find yourself using your coaching skills the most in our new world?
Mm. Well, we ground ourselves at least monthly, with our team members one on one for
Right.
a specific reflection time. So
Right.
let's sit here. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about what you enjoyed from this month, what you're proud of, what you felt was successful. And let's talk about the things that are challenging or blockers. What else can Buffer or I do to support you in what you're doing? And these are all things that we might they might tickle the back of our brain as we're going through our month, but when do you bring them up, right? Well, this is where you bring them up. So that's a perfect opportunity to be able to sit there and say, oh, even if it was just a little comment
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
someone is saying that I was working on this project and they're, explaining it, and then they mention a little line of, and then I got stuck, so and they kind of go past it. Well, and you can circle back around. You mentioned you got stuck in a certain place. I'd love to hear more about that. And then we can start to open that up. And then you realize there's a whole new world in here. Let's explore more. And maybe we can talk to this other person because
Right.
they might not understand how that affected the work that you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. So finding those human to human moments where you as a listener can pinpoint that little sense of something, even if it wasn't explicitly spoken. And then there are things that are explicitly spoken, and then you can jump right into those as well. So that's a big, big opportunity for using coaching skills. So just allowing the space and opportunity for someone who's working really fast and really
Mm.
hard, who maybe
Yeah.
bypassed a little nudge that happened within themselves. Now they can pause on that nudge
Right.
and they can try to figure out, they can lean into it more.
And so the listening is really important. And these are live sessions with a
Yes.
direct report you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
So they're monthly. And so they afford that chance, don't they, to really listen to what's been important for them. We're very good at that as humans, right? And I think that's one of the core things, right? Is being able to listen for those and listen, as you say, there might be a fleeting emotion or something that we or our direct report is experiencing. And it's us being able to hold that space to not go over it quite so quickly, but allow for them to come back and reflect on it, especially because I think the pace at which we're working has just increased, and we can just motor through things in quite a systematic or methodical way and not take a moment to pause and think about what am I feeling about this? Am I feeling any stress around the pressure to have something finished or to move something forward because the expectation is it should be easy, right? So I feel it's nice that you mentioned that just holding space and listening out for some things that are actually really important where the knots are for people at the moment.
It doesn't just like when you have a child, you don't have a handbook, right? It's something you kind of learn
Yeah,
over time how
yeah.
to
They
figure it
don't
out.
trouble those. Yeah.
Not that AI is at all a child or anything like that, but it's similar where it's like, oh, we have this brilliant technology at our disposal, and this person seems like they're using it really well and in so many different ways, and I should be there too. And so that expectation that sometimes people have for themselves or feel that
Mhm.
they should exude mastery of,
Yeah.
that I think that's where some of the knots end up coming up, is through
Yeah.
that rush to grow in that experience, or to grow in the presentation
Mhm.
that we have it all figured out, when really it's an exploration for all of us. And
Mhm.
it's something that we're all going to need to, tinker with here and there. And I've spent some weekends where I'm trying to play with personal projects so I can understand the foundation
Mhm.
of, I mean, there's so much. From, even if you're just thinking of one system like Claude, you have chat, you have Cowork, you have Claude Code, then you can use the terminal, and then you can use terminal through something like VS Code. And so it's like, how do all these things fit together? I need to figure that out for myself so that I feel comfortable when I come to work next. But I think, and then it's fun to work on some personal projects too, and see what you can come up with on your own. But I do think that's where some of the knots come up right now, in the where we are today with the introduction of AI and the rapid increase in the technology.
It feels like roles and functions are blurring quite a bit. That,
Mm.
we all have to get comfortable with a certain level of technology and different coding language and so on, even though we may still sit on the outskirts of it because tools allow us to. There's a lot that's going to be happening in this space, and I really appreciate the time that you've given. I just want to close on, what would you say has been the biggest growth moment in your leadership career so far?
Mm. One of the things that I have appreciated in my growth as a leader has been very difficult situations where you're working with someone who is on a growth plan, whether it's a team member that you started with to begin with and they were your report, or maybe you took on a team member who is on a growth plan and are supporting them. And that is where the listening really comes in, and the seeing beyond the surface of what is the unique value of this individual. Let me hear them. Let me see what is they're passionate about,
Yeah.
what's interesting to them, what they feel strongly about. And taking that out, helping them see it if they don't already, helping them rise in confidence with that. And then for those things that they're working on, having that type feedback loop. So it's this two-sided thing where
Mm.
you're trying to lift up, and you're also keeping accountable, that this is holding you back from being successful in your role and what we need from you in that role. And so that tight feedback back loop, which needs to have some intention and rigor around it. It's not all soft and fluffy, right? But then you also
That's
have
right.
this, because if we
Mhm.
don't understand our own strengths and the value that we bring, then we're not going to be able to diligently look at this and even work on it. Because if we're feeling terrible all around, we can't even focus. So I
Right.
think that is something that is so multidimensional, working with someone who is struggling to reach the expectations of their role, and helping lay the foundation that allows them to still feel enabled while also growing to hit that
Right.
level of expectation. And then when you see people rise through that and come out on the other side, and then completely flourish because they unlocked whatever it was that was holding them back before, that's where really the reward, I think, that comes from that work.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Darcy. I think it's the patience to be able to slow down and work out with that individual. What's their motivation? Where do they want to get to? Um, what's their driving force? And what's missing as well? What needs to be introduced or brought in to be able to make this even more enticing for them? And yeah, when the switch flicks and they fully own that path for themselves, that's an immensely privileged place to be as a leader, right? To be able to have supported that, but also to be witness to it as well. So, yeah. Well, I'm sure there is a lot of that going on, and I hope in more and more places as well to do that. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Darcy. I can't believe that we've been talking this long, and I could talk much longer with you. So thank you for coming on Leaders Who Coach today.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. It has been a lasting foundation and big bucket that I draw from in both my professional life with Buffer and all of the team members, peers, and manager Asa, who has also gone through the course, which is pretty awesome to have that same, verbiage and
Right.
terminology that we can use together. And
Yeah.
I also use it with my kids too. So I'm just such a such an
Oh,
amazing
lovely.
wealth of a huge tool belt to have on. So thank you for your continued work.
Uh, my pleasure. And it was always lovely having you in the cohort. And the energy that you brought to that. You were fully leaning into it, I think, as you do with everything that you give your attention to. Sounds like the tennis as well has got you in that space. But thank you. Thank you for talking with me today, Darcy. I've really enjoyed the energy, like I've said, that you've always brought to our conversations and in the cohort, your energy for people and your generosity, sharing your leadership style today and everything that's going on, all the growth. It's an exciting time. You can follow Darcy's regular posts on LinkedIn. I do follow those. The details will be in the description below. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please let me know with a like, comment, and share. And if you want more content like this, do make sure that you're subscribed to the Leaders Who Coach podcast. In a world where leadership roles are changing, I wholeheartedly advocate for leaders using coaching skills. And they're not just your regular coaching skills, because it's important to understand that there are stakeholders that you're responsible for. There are targets, there are teams you're responsible for. So what it requires of you to use coaching skills is quite different from pure coaching. And that's a really important distinction. And like Darcy, for yourself to stay grounded and for your team to thrive. Coaching is brilliant at allowing you to do that. AI has been great for us at Coach Lead and certainly Leaders Who Coach, because you can now learn coaching skills and techniques specifically for leaders like you at your own pace for less than the cost of a monthly takeout or takeaway, with a much longer lasting comfort level. Can I say that? I mean, takeout is always lovely, but the impact that you can have and the confidence in yourself to be able to navigate these very fast changing, sometimes quite complex spaces for you and your team is super important. You can find the Leaders Who Coach app in the App Store and on Google Play. Download it for free and you can start your subscription to Leaders Who Coach with a 7-day free trial and cancel anytime. See you there or here on the Leaders Who Coach podcast next time.